3 megawatt and going up to the 10 megawatt. Within the years, it was revised. So you can easily feel how accommodating the government authority is here. So, and they are following the best of the practices. And all of my colleagues will echo to my thoughts, whether it's Imran or Mr. Dilip Baru and everyone is here. So they are actively participating in it here. So just adding to the background of the power industry in Bangladesh. So after the independence of the Bangladesh, it is the country which was thriving of their natural resources. And for any country to grow, it's require a good requirement of a power. So most of the projects here was dependent on the natural gas, and slowly, as the factory industrialization was taking place, the power was shifted to the coal and LNG base and these other modes of the power, and also including the HFO, which was a very fast establishment of the projects, whereas it's a very expensive source of power. But now, as the country doesn't have much natural gas available, and all these plants of the natural gas is dependent on the import gas, so it's time to go more onto the renewable. And it's a high time for this country to go on the renewable. Even if you see the tariffs of in Bangladesh, of the consumer tariff has been increases more than 200% in last 10 years. Even the recent increase was in the month of February. And as most of the consumption of the power here is from the, I will say, like all these factories, garment factories, or the textile garments, textile ceramics factory, they total account for the 40% of the power consumption. And right now they are totally dependent on the grid supply. And then they have the second source of the gas supply, on which gas LNG they produce the energy, and the third is their HFO. So for them, their roofs are very empty. So they should definitely go for the rooftop solar. And ultimately, they all are, most of the exports from Bangladesh is also happening in the European Union. And the European Union, most of the buyers have committed themselves to be a carbon neutral by 2030. So ultimately, it's giving them the business sense also. At the same time, they are also qualifying for the carbon neutral supply chain. But I also believe rooftop is a future for Bangladesh, but only the rooftop will not sustain the main vision of the country. We have to go for the ground mounted projects. And the ground mounted projects, even if you see the last 14-15 PPAs, which was awarded for more than 1.3 gigawatt. So there are some issues of Bangladesh is a country where there's a land scarcity. And for any international IPP player to coming in, they should have a vision of the land. And because the most of the projects are happening in the north, and the north part is the one which is happened by the partition. So there's for example, for 100 acres of land, you might have to deal with 120 owners. So it's sometimes it becomes a very difficult task. So for me, for like all of us are here, we are working in this sector from almost in Bangladesh from last 5 years, when the journey of renewable started in Bangladesh. I will say for the rooftop projects, there are some initiatives further to the net metering policy and everything to be implemented to be the tax incentives. Like, for example, for the ground mounted projects, there is a no custom and VAT. Whereas in rooftop, they have to give the custom duty and VAT. And considering for the commercial aspects of this project, there is almost 19% of the impact on the cost. To get this, if the government can come up with some policies or give the tax window for at least 3-4 years, we see there will be a good boom in the power, in the commercial power from the renewable sector for the factories. And for the ground mounted projects, I believe if the government can come up with the policies of solar parks, where they give the land and giving it to the rent to the international IPPs, and giving the infra of the transmission line and creating a dedicated switchyard for the evacuation, it will give a good boost to the local grid and everything to getting it the boosted up. And this is the big, dealing with all the international IP. The major concern was the land and the transmission. And considering to the work wise, the you don't have to consider like any problem in Bangladesh has the best source of the manpower to execute the projects, and supply can be done throughout the world. So I would like to further ask Mr. Izaz, because he is the pioneer in the floating in Bangladesh, who is we are discussing floating from the last almost like 1.5 year, and his vision of floating is now actually on the ground, and he has already written a good chapter in the solar book of Bangladesh. So he may add on the floating solar. Mr. Izaz?
Mr. Izaz was just here, I think. He just
Yes.
I think
we were just seeing him.
probably he was disconnected. That's why.
Yeah, I think he got disconnected. So
Definitely, internet is
Oh.
not. This is Dipal. I think internet is. I think the.
Okay.
Mr.
So
Deepal,
Mr. Dipal is back. I think he should take the lead now.
yeah. Mr. Deepal, can you please
I think
start?
Yeah, I'm sorry. There problem for internet and others. I think these two important point. One is the net metering about the VAT and tax. I think one issue, and the ground mounted about the land issue. One point is one issue raised solar park. So I think Mr. Alauddin can respond to these 2 points. His view would be interesting for us.
Okay.
Please.
So, thank you, Mr. Dipal Barua. So, for net metering, the issue regarding VAT and tax, in Bangladesh, VAT and tax is being dealt with by the Internal Resource Division. From our side, from Power Division, we have basically requested the National Board of Revenue, and we are waiting for their response from them, number 1 point. And number 2 is ground-mounted solar park. Of course, we have been trying to promote ground-mounted solar, and also like India, basically we are also now trying to acquire land from government and also follow the plug-and-play system like it is India and elsewhere. So we are now basically in the process of acquiring land so that we can acquire land and we can make the land ready and also evacuation ready for the sponsors, and then we'll give it to them. But it takes time because acquiring land is a long process. We can't do it overnight. This is the problem, but we are working on it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Alauddin
Thank
sir,
you.
I just want to add 1 point
Please.
from
Imran.
and the position
Go ahead, Imran.
Another important point for the utilities, basically, as I'm representing Sangren, so we are basically focusing more on the utility scale. Okay.
Yes.
So, sir, I think another important point is how we can shorten the overall project development process, like from submitting the project proposal, then up to getting the LOI or PPA. So I think it takes almost 1 or more than 1 year in some cases.
Because
and overall 30 permits or more required. So see, for like us Chinese companies, before like lots of companies were there. So if someone feels that like I need to wait 1 year or more than 1 year, so they may lose interest. So I think, sir, another important point will be how we can like make shorten this overall process. Like maybe for the land verification, we can engage in online approval process, or like for the verification process. I think so this is another important point. Like some of the foreign players are also feeling a little bit hesitant to come into this sector.
Thank you, Mr. Imran Chaudhary, for your very pertinent question. So, in processing, because you see both sides should be okay. From the IPP company side, we often find proposals incomplete. That's why we send queries, they do reply. That's why it takes lot time to process this. If we get a proposal ready, complete in itself, fulfilling every requirement, then I think it can be done within 6 months time, because we have to take clearance from the Department of Environment and some other issues. But if we find the project submitted complete in itself, in that case, we will not have to wait for 1 year or long. This is one point. And the second point is, we have also following both methods. One is we are applying our special act, one side, and another side also we float tender. Right now, I am as a chairman of the Electricity Generation Company Bangladesh. We have floated tender also, 50 megawatt in Sonagaji, Upadala, Feni district. So it is open to you to participate in the tender event. So it is, we are basically side by side. There is also, we have floated tender also. We are processing the unsolicited offers simultaneously. So it is open to the sponsors, those who are interested. If you are also participate in the bidding process also. Am I answered your question, Mr.
Yes,
Imran?
So last question from my side, sir, just so
Please,
maybe
please.
just for utility scale side. As we all know that, sir, for the Rangunia project, the tariff was kind of very much abnormal. I think everyone will agree. So, sir, how you, from top management, how, sir, you are feeling like before maybe 1 year, still the tariff was very high when, for example, if I say if Jinko would be requested to submit it as unsolicited, they would must give 10 cents or 11 cents. But when the it is a matter of bidding, they just suddenly fall down the 7.49, where Canadian Solar, Scatec Solar, they are also good developer. If you say they are like 10 cents, 13 cents. So you see, sir, so it's kind of negative. It can be negative view for the other developers, that whether maybe next day when Sangdo or other developers will go for another project, will the government will consider that no, Jinko is giving 7.49, so you have to give 7 cents. So I think, so this is also a major concern for Siddharth. I think like you may also agree.
I will, Imran, on this, I will add. So that was the first project in Bangladesh when the land was given. So even if you see the price wise, because BPDP has their own model of deciding the price, the price which comes in the north part of Bangladesh and the south part of the Bangladesh totally different, because of the different issues of logistics is a big issue. There is a movement restrictions and everything. And considering the Rangunia project, which is hardly 36 kilometers from the main port, from the Chittagong, on which your major supplies can come, and the project is just on the main road itself. There you don't have to develop any infra. So it was the one of the best sites in Bangladesh till now, and the government came up with the land on the rental basis. That was the reason the price has come down. Other, if you see it has to be come up with the land, the last of the Nitra Kona project, it was above 9.2 cents, I believe. It was near about 9.2 cents. So if I see the Jinko deal was purely, everyone has a different model of the financing and getting the funds in Bangladesh. So they have a long vision to come here. I feel they have done a really good bet, and considering the site risk is a very good project to be come up. So other than this, what government can further add up, while they have given the land, in future if they can also give the dike with the land, which
Yes,
is a
exactly.
another
It's ready
risk.
to build basically. It's
Yes,
so that the
it's
project
like
developer can ready to build.
Yes, so risk free, because dike is a one concept. If the people who are sitting in Europe or US, for them it's a very new thing.
No, it's
So
not
it
easy
will
for them.
ultimately give a different confidence level to all the IPPs.
I see. Okay.
So,
Okay, I think any other any person to ask any questions to Mr. Alauddin?
I think
Mr. Alauddin,
I
please
think
wait.
Mr. Siddharth Rana has already supplemented me on. Hello.
Yes, sir.
So I think Mr. Siddharth Rana has supplemented me on the question of Imran Chaudhary, because once a price comes out of a bidding process, so we can't say it abnormal. because it is the outcome of a bidding process. What government can do, it is open competition. So already explanation is given by Siddharth that land was provided by BBTV and also their evacuation facilities is over there. That are the advantages of that particular project.
So, sir, in a summary, I think we can say that if the government can provide float the tender, which is kind of ready to build for the developers, I think it can be suitable for everyone.
Yes. We are basically trying, but the process is same. Let's say acquiring process for government and for public, that hardly makes any difference, because all the lands are fragmented. Let's say for say 100 acres of land, maybe that 200 owners are over there, due to the fragmentation of holding. These are the kind of challenges basically we do face. That's the reason behind taking too much time for developing the land. But still we are trying. We'll keep on trying.
And sir, I have one suggestion about the land. Like Bangladesh has some abandoned air bases, which is not in use now. And that can be, and that is totally under the Air Force. So there is some land parcels available with the Air Force or the Army and the Defense. So if the government can take some land with them, it will be the land procurement will be in very expedite manner.
Already from my side, I have personally taken an initiative. I wrote an article on it as to how we can use the excess land of airports of Bangladesh. I came out with an article for this, and we are trying to convince those, because those are separate authorities. Then that is not under the control of the power division. We basically can recommend and basically facilitate. Do you get me?
Civil aviation authority, yeah.
Yeah, civil aviation. So we are already trying to convince them so that they can use their idle lands which are not used for aviation purposes. We are trying for this.
I'll request Mr. Deepal Barua to give opportunity to our other speakers as well to speak. So I'll request now him to request Mr. R.V. Shahi and then Mr. Rahul Khatri to give us a presentation. So first, I'd like to invite Mr. R.V. Shahi to give his view.
Hello, yeah. Okay, Mr. R.V. Shah, please.
R.V. Shahi.
Thank you, Mr. Alauddin. Honorable Secretary, Ex-Secretary, please.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
We can
sir.
hear you.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Shahi, we can hear you.
Fine.
Thanks, Anand, for that excellent conference that you have organized. Not only this, but series of conference. And it is I who saw your mail, and then I contacted your office that with Bangladesh, I have been associated for the last 10 years, right from 2009 October, in so many things that are happening, including this enactment of SREDA Act, and I used to visit the SREDA office in early days. I think confining myself to the subject that is solar, as rightly observed by Mr. Alauddin, right in the keynote address, that land is an issue in Bangladesh. Therefore, in Bangladesh program of almost 50,000 megawatt by 2041, at this point of time, Bangladesh has a little more than 20,000 megawatt of capacity in different fuel mix, and the projection for 2041 is more than 50,000 megawatt. So obviously, in that scheme of things, we can't expect a very large proportion for solar as such, primarily because of the availability of land. But within the constraints that we have, let us see what we can do. So one of the suggestions that has emerged, and there I have some extra additional suggestion to make, because I was associated when World Bank was trying to fund through State Bank of India, the rooftop solar program in India. And then I had series of seminars with different stakeholders, the house owners, the industry buildings, the regulator, the distribution companies, and then common program for all of them. Then we found that it will be necessary for small users to have a concept of aggregators, because aggregators can provide them technology support. They can also provide funding arrangement, and World Bank funding was available through State Bank of India. So I think a concept of aggregators for small industry units, households, offices, that you can perhaps adapt. I will request Mr. Alauddin that, and when I come next time, I will visit your office. But for this lockdown, I have been visiting Bangladesh almost every month, nowadays every 2 months. So I will give you the details of how we went about popularizing the rooftop. And a lot will have to be done in eliciting the cooperation of the existing distribution companies, because the distribution companies become a little bit of, opposing force, because they tend to lose the large consumers. Like you said, industry is paying big amount of revenue, and therefore distribution companies feel that is a threat to them. So I think one solid thing, in absence of enough land for this, one solid thing rightly identified is the rooftop. But rooftop to succeed, a lot of things will have to be done. So I do feel at the stage of clarity about policy, clarity about financing, how we incentivize financing, how do we channelize some of the financing which could be available, which would be the agency which will help them, which will be the aggregators which will help them. So in that way, I think this can quickly pick up. Then so many things happen on net metering. People doubt whether they are really getting the benefit, they are not getting the benefit. So I think some experience is available, good and bad experience is available in India for last 5 years. Let us pick up those good and bad experiences, success story, not so success story, and then try to adapt the policy in Bangladesh so that this category of solar program can succeed. That is one thing now that we can do. The second is, I am reviewing every month with EGCB MD, Mr. Arun Saha. Every month we are reviewing your Sonagaji program, where we have, and at one place you have something like 250 megawatt of program that is going on. World Bank, I was instrumental in suggesting to the World Bank to fund the first one, 50 megawatt, and that is a stage of now tendering, etc. So I think Sonagaji about 250 megawatt, definitely with constant review, constant monitoring and overseeing the implementation, I think that definitely can make a success. So that is the second one that I will definitely like to make a suggestion. The third one, the suggestion came on solar park. And Mr. Alauddin rightly said that we can't have army land or air force land. It will be a very tough task to get it. But then I tell you, right from 2010 or 11, when Mr. Azad was the power secretary, we tried to identify two areas, Matarbari and Maheshkhali. You may be aware. It took us a lot of time, and finally almost 6,000 acres of land in Maheshkhali has been acquired. Not all will be available for solar, because there are other programs, and definitely we are not going to stress more on more thermal plants. Some of them were for thermal plants, coal-based thermal plants. So definitely out of that, yes, out of so many blocks that have been identified in Maheshkhali, you can identify few of them. There are 8 blocks that have been identified in Maheshkhali, and as I said, that right from 2010-11 we have been trying to get it. It took a lot of time to acquire that land. I think that is one area where you can think of some solar park. Maybe out of 8 blocks, 2 blocks. Similarly, Matarbari, some area may be available. I think we can't expect something like 5,000 megawatt in one place, like in India we are trying to do in desert, and we are trying to do in Kutch area. That is not possible. But within the constraints that are there, I think these are some of the things. I will not say they are low-hanging fruit, but then a fillip or a momentum can be introduced. So Maheshkhali, few, maybe about 500 megawatt solar park of smaller capacities by different people. But I think in all these matters, a single window clearance, facilitation, a lot of things will have to be done in SREDA group to see that these happen, whether it is rooftop or this, your solar park. or net metering or anything. There's a lot of implementational issues come up, and we need to do that. I think, and then financing. I think if you approach World Bank or ADB in terms of a single window bank, one bank, which then helps these small users and industry users to do the rooftop, that and then aggregators for the small households, and that can do a lot of things. Tax incentive, of course, that will be a great idea. I think then you can have a lot of solar power from India itself, because we have, as you know, at this point of time, about 1200 megawatt of capacity power is going from India to that place. One thing to solar developers. I mean, many of the solar developers are there. I don't think people will put solar developers at par with rest of the things in the beginning. But at some point of time, solar developer will need to compete with what is the other available power. Because now gone are the days that too much of prop will be available. You can see now in India, solar is giving a tough time for thermal power, even pithead thermal power station. But the solar power in India now on competitive bidding is coming to something like how much? About 5 cents? Not 5, even 4 cents. 4 cents per kilowatt hour. So I think we will, I mean, we can't expect that figure there. In Bangladesh, the power that you are getting at generation level today is about 6 to 7 cents, not the gas-based, domestic gas-based, but others. So I think developers also will have to choose technologies, choose suppliers, and also request the government for whatever sort of facilitation they need to do, so that, I mean, gone are the days now that RPO will prop up the renewables. Renewables are on their own. Wind is on its own, solar is on its own. Maybe in the beginning something can happen, but otherwise that doesn't happen. I think these are the ways. Definitely in a situation where we have a number of constraints in Bangladesh, to have large proportion of solar, many things we can do. And I can assure you, next time I meet Mr. Alauddin in your office in that time, and then we will start a series of, like I've done on most of your organizations. And even now, EGCB, I try to see that these 3 projects in EGCB, which they have identified, which gives you almost 50 plus 100 plus 100, 250 megawatts. Soon they will be in the market for tendering, etc. Definitely supported by different financing agencies. We'll do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very RB Shah, very well thought, and I think very important contribution for us. I think anybody had any questions here to Mr. RB Shahi? Any questions?
Mr. Rana, you have any question? Mr. Rana had I heard you with good interest, and you made very good points.
Any
questions? Sir, you have very well articulated about the land, and you are behind all the vision of like sitting from India and handling so many things for Bangladesh. And in future, like you have very rightly mentioned, once India is very surplus, and as we have the ISTS bids and everything in India, there will be definitely a surplus solar power will be keep pumping to Bangladesh, like what Adani has recently also signed last year. That is the future in case the land is, because renewable is the thing on which full world is moving towards the renewable. And this is the last resort for us, like everyone, after sun, we have nothing. Now we have already explored the ground. So this is, we all are moving towards the better future. So I believe the EGCP success on which you are working will give a new dimension to the Bangladesh energy sector.
But I promised that with Mr. Alauddin that I will now in my bi-monthly, I come every 2 months, and we sit every organization. In good old days when SREDA law was to be made, I used to do that. So I'll sit with this group and see some of the things, like I told you, rooftop, aggregators, financing, net metering problem, etc. I will try to sit with them, and also on solar park in Maheshkhali, because Maheshkhali was our thought. With Maheshkhali, we wanted to make the power capital of Bangladesh. You see, at one place, 6,000 acres of land. And at that time, we wanted 3-4 thermal plants. I don't think we will have 3-4 thermal plants there. Something we can definitely tried with Mr. Sreda that something should be done as solar parks. I think couple of things which can happen. Of course, floating solar is also an important concept. We have to see because the swiftness of the river and all that we will have to see. I mean, as a pilot project, we should do one floating solar and then see how best it can happen in some of the rivers, if not all the rivers in Bangladesh. So I think I assure that this will be on my regular agenda every 2 months to sit with this group and try to see what good or bad experiences of our Indian context, and in what way we can adapt those things at the policy level and at the facilitation level. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for our time. I think, what about Mr. Ajaz is here? Ajaz Majid is here. He's in connection. Ajaz Majid.
No, sir, Mr. Izaz is not here. Maybe you can request Mr. Rahul Khatri for a presentation.
Okay, Rahul Khatri. Mr. Rahul Khatri, please give us a
Yes, sir.
presentation.
Mr. Rahul, you want me to put the presentation for you?
Yeah, please do that, Anand. Can you hear me properly?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, please go ahead.
So you all can see the screen now?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Yeah, so I will, in the interest of time, I will try to cover it in 10 minutes, though typically it takes more time. So again, thank you, Anand, for this opportunity. It's always a pleasure to be a part of your event. And I think we had pretty interesting discussions with regard to stage 1 challenges that I think we all see and all have seen in India and in the other parts of the world with regard to land issues, with regard to PPAs, and I'm sure that government will work with the industry value chain to resolve them. So I'm going to jump into the stage 2 when you talk about the selection of PV modules and, more importantly, operation of PV modules, because we all know that PV module is a critical component. And when you talk about financial performance of any solar project, the performance of PV modules in the field for 25 years becomes very critical. And so PV module reliability is an important subject, and I think we all have read about that. And there are multiple approaches with regard to how PV module reliability can be understood. So a lot of organizations look at doing some tests in the lab, but DuPont has been in this field for more than 35 years now. And we thought that it's best to kind of go in the field, inspect PV modules which have been installed in different parts of the world, and get data from the field. So that is the approach that we have followed. And in this presentation, I'm going to share some key outcomes and learning of the inspections that we have done as far as PV module is concerned. So this slide, which we have, or which you can see right now on your screen, is about DuPont Photovoltaic Solutions. And DuPont, some of you would know, is one of the oldest companies that you can maybe find. And in terms of the years, we have been there for more than 200 years now. And in the PV space as well, we have been kind of engaging with the entire value chain for more than 35 years now. So our main business pertains to supply of materials for cell and module manufacturing. And along with that, we do engage with downstream players as well. And when you talk about field analysis, when you talk about module selection, that is what we try to do when we talk about engaging with the downstream value chain. And when you say downstream value chain, we engage with all the key players with regard to developers, EPCs, consultants, lenders, and as well as government. Next chart, please. Anand, can you move to the next chart? Yeah. So this is
Yes.
these are just some numbers, and in terms of what we have chart previous to this. I think there's some lag. Sorry. You have to go to slide number 3.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so these are some numbers in terms of the studies that we have done, and the idea again is to understand the performance of PV modules based on different parameters with regard to bill of materials, because PV module look like looks like a product which has glass at the top and a white color backsheet at the back, but they do have different materials when you kind of, again, try to get into or inside a PV module. So with regard to how the module performance would change based on materials, based on climates, which is definitely a pretty important parameter, in some cases based on mounting configurations as well. So we spoke a lot about rooftop installations and ground mount. So that also could make a difference in terms of how a PV module would perform in the field. And as you can see, we have been to more than 500 installations and inspected more than 3 gigawatt of total power. And we have data from different parts of the world. We have teams in these regions. And as I had mentioned, we go actively out and inspect the PV modules in the field. And we don't stop there. Once we find some issues in the modules, we try to find out more details around why the defect is there. And then we do a lot of data analysis as well, so that we can do or make correlations with different aspects. Next chart, please. So these are, again, the results or the summary of the field inspection that we have done. And I believe that Bangladesh is still a pretty new market as far as solar is concerned. But what we have found is that these numbers or these results are applicable to all the conditions. So I think it's a pretty good learning, because the data is from different parts of the world and from different age groups. And when a country or when a region starts new, I think this kind of data helps in what is the mistakes that other regions take. And that is the objective of showing these charts with you. So as far as summary is concerned, what is alarming is that we have found defects in around 30% of all the modules that we inspected. And 30% is a big number, because the average age of the inspection or the plants that we had inspected is just 4 years. And we are here talking about 25 years. So from that standpoint, 30% is a pretty high number. And again, as you would know that a PV module would have different components. It's not a single component product, and different components behave differently in the field. So when you talk about module defects, it could be a defect in a backsheet, it could be a defect in cell, it could be a defect in encapsulate. Or it could be a defect in more than 2 components in a particular module. So it's always makes sense to kind of do a data analysis with regard to which components are showing defects, and that is how you can understand what are the different defect modes, and then what are the key areas which you need to focus on. So that is what we did, and we found that backsheet and cells contribute maximum to the defects that we've observed. So a backsheet showed around 60% defect rate, and cell showed around 12% defect rate. And with regard to cell, I think industry has a pretty good understanding of why we have those issues in terms of cell cracks, in terms of hotspots. Backsheet is something which is still not relatively well understood, because the issues that we observe in backsheets have happened mainly in last 10 years. And that is why it's really important to understand why those issues are occurring. And that is where I'm going to focus my discussion on in subsequent charts. Next slide, please. So when you talk about backsheets, then again, there are different defect modes in which material can fail. And the defect modes are compiled in this pie chart, which you can see. And again, when you talk about backsheet, backsheet itself is a 3-layer structure. Typically, it's a 3-layer structure. We can call them outer layer, core layer, and inner layer. So outer layer is something which you can touch in a finished module, and inner layer is something which is going to be towards the encapsulant side. So we have done that detailed analysis in terms of identifying which layer in the field has degraded. And the pie chart shows 3 defects in different layers and the type of defects. So we have seen cracking, we have seen yellowing, we have seen delamination. And I would emphasize on the cracking part, because that is where the performance on the modules start to come in. And with regard to the overall defect rate in backsheets, what we observed is that more than 60% of the defects were into cracking. And that is where the backsheet defect starts to have an impact on the performance of the modules in terms of either higher generation loss, or in some cases safety issues as well. Next chart, please. So these are again some of the issues or the defect, the impact of backsheet issues or failures that we observed in the field in terms of either power loss, or it could be with regard to the generation loss. We know that we have to have inverters in the plants. So because of backsheet tracking, we have in that inverter would start to tip off because the way plants are made, and if backsheet cracks, it can lead current, and the current leakage can lead to inverter trippings. We have seen in some cases cracking would start or allow moisture to go inside the modules, which would in turn have corrosion in the cells and in the metal contacts, which in turn would lead to higher power output loss. We have also seen in a lot of cases, again, the cracked backsheet can lead to arcing. Again, this has to do with the moisture ingress inside the module. And in some cases, we have seen this leading to burning. So burning with regard to ground mount installations is only limited to a damage of, but when you talk about rooftop installations, and a situation like this can lead to a fire in the building, and we all know that could be more fatal because we have people also underneath building. So a backsheet failure can lead to multiple consequences as far as PV module performance is concerned. The next chart, please.
Mr. Rahul, can I request you to wind up in 3-4 minutes,
Time is
10 minutes? So
over.
we are.
Yeah, I will take it.
So please come fast.
I will take around 5 more minutes. Next chart, please.
5 minutes is long. Please try to within 2 minutes. It would be better.
This is again with regard to what we're discussing, that when you talk about backsheet failure, it's always lead to a large failure in a plant, because most of the modules would have one backsheet, and if there's a backsheet failure, then that is going to be extended to all the modules. So this is again a real case when backsheet failure led to the replacement of the entire plant after 7 years in the field. Next chart, please. So these are again some defect trends, and when you talk about backsheet, there are different materials which are there in the markets, and that is where you have to be careful because what we have observed that in most of the materials, the defect rate or the trend is going to go up as the modules age. So that is what we are trying to show here. Different materials are shown in different colors in terms of PVDF, in terms of FAB, PET, polyamide, and Tedlar. So other than Tedlar, which as you can see, are in the field for more than 35 years now, and the defect rate even after 30 years is less than 0.1% overall. Whereas in all the other backsheets, the defect rate is going up as the modules age, and in some cases it's as high as 90%, which shows that most of the modules with those backsheets have failed once they complete a certain age. Next chart, please. So next chart, please. So I will just focus on some of the emerging trends in terms of what we have observed in last 2 years. So one of the backsheet which is commonly used is PVDF, and PVDF was started to be used around 10 years ago. Before that, it was never used as a backsheet material. But after 7 or 8 years in the field, as you can see in the bar chart, the defect rate is going up. And in 9+ years modules, the defect rate in this backsheet is 23%. Which kind of indicates that as the time progresses, the defect rate in this backsheet is going to go up only. And in terms of defect modes, you can see the way this backsheet cracks in the pictures at the bottom of the slide. So you can clearly see the material is cracking. And this has been observed in all the conditions, in all the climate conditions that we have found these backsheets in use in. The next chart, please. These are again some more photographs of the same backsheet. We have data from different parts of the world, from USA, from Gujarat, India, and then from Italy and from China as well. So it's not a single case when we found defects. There are multiple cases now. We haven't covered the entire defect or the entire cases in one slide, but definitely there are a lot more cases. Next chart, please. So one more trend that we observed is that in terms of inner layer as well, and as I had mentioned earlier, that there are different layers in the backsheet. So PVDF is an outer layer case of cracking, and we have observed cracking in inner layer as well. And this is also, we have found, typically leads to a lot of issues in terms of high generation loss and safety issues. And as you can see in the last picture, where the moisture has gone inside the backsheet or the module, and that is what is going to lead to high generation loss. Next chart, please. Anand, can you move to the next chart? You can
Rahul,
skip this
can you-
one. Yeah, so I think you have to give me a couple of minutes because I dialed in some time. So you have to give me a few more minutes. Next chart, please. So I think I can see a lot of lines on the chart. I don't know the reason behind that. But anyway, so I can, what I was trying to kind of, can you go back, please? I will
Yes.
just take 2 more minutes and finish it off. Go back.
This one?
No, the next one. Next one. Slide number 13.
Slide number 13.
Yeah. So what I was trying to show here is that this is one case when we found modules with different backsheets, and the backsheets were Tedlar, PVDF, polyamide, and PET. And what we observed that other than Tedlar, all the other backsheets failed. So what it shows is that in the same plant, and when you have modules from the same supplier, the conditions are same. The performance of the module will depend on which backsheets are being used. So unlike, I don't know, I can't see that slide. It's a different slide that I'm showing.
Which slide do you want? Which number?
13, 1-3.
This is the 13 slide. 13
Oh,
order.
next one then.
This is number 14.
Yeah, yeah, right. So this was talking about in terms of how the different backsheet would perform in the same climatic conditions, and when the modules are being supplied by same supplier. So even if everything else is same, the performance of backsheet would depend on the materials, and that is what this slide is showing in terms of no defect in Tedlar-based backsheets after around 7 years, but all the other backsheets are showing cracking in the field. You can move to the slide number 16 now. 1-6.
Next one.
You can just skip this one. Next one, yeah. So just would like to summarize everything. So what we've observed is that when one has to understand more about the reliability of PV modules, we believe that the field performance or the field testing is extremely important, and the way all that we observed in terms of field and the lack of correlation with the lab testing kind of validates that. And what we observed is that as far as backsheet is concerned, defect rate is increasing with time, and it does depend on the materials which are used in backsheets. And what we've also observed that as far as backsheet is concerned, while all the other backsheets are showing a higher defect rate, and especially when the modules become old, even in 35-year-old modules, the Tedlar-based backsheets are showing very low, degradation rate. So we always believe is that as an end user, when you're buying modules or even you're investing in a PV plant, you have to be careful with regard to what backsheets been used, and take an active approach in terms of going ahead and specifying backsheet structures. So since we have seen issues in both outer layer and inner layer, we recommend to go with a structure which has been used in the field for many years now, and that is known as TPD structure or a Tedlar polyester Tedlar structure. Next chart, please. So when you talk about risk mitigation, again, it's not limited to backsheets, but I think every component that is used inside a PV module has to be specified, and that is the message that based on the performance of different modules in the field, as an end user or as an investor, you have to take an active approach and specify what you need Otherwise, the discussion will be based on what price, at what price you're going to buy modules, but you won't be able to compare different modules based on the modules or the materials that they have used. So you have to take an active approach and specify these specifications in your RFQ tenders or RFQ specifications for PV modules. I think so. This is the last chart, and over to you, Anand. And if there are any questions, I think we can take them now.
So I think
Thank you.
let us skip the questions for now, but I'll request Mr. Dipal to give opportunity to the remaining speakers. Mr. Ijaz is still not here, so I'll request you to give your speech and give opportunity to other speakers, and let us try to wind up in next 15 minutes or so. Thank you.
So what about the Imran? Can you, Imran,
Yes,
please tell?
sir, one more
I-
question as Mr. Rahul was discussing about the product. So basically, I'm just want to talk about something which is related to basically the local solar players. I think in the webinar there's some local solar players. I mean, in terms of the Bangladeshi industry, like who are basically doing business in terms of the capex model. Like I think we all know that beside BPDB, like or like beside utility scale or the net metering projects, there is also another business segment in our industry, like where Royal Force, Energy Pack, Superstar, and some of the other local solar companies like to work as EPC. So basically, it is related with. I would like to seek attention to Mr. Alauddin, sir. So, sir, as you know that like in Bangladesh, like beside the power ministry, some other government organization also invites maybe 100 kilo, 200 kilo, 50 kilo peak tender, which is basically for the business of the local solar companies. But let's see, like as like I've worked with previously many local solar companies, it's still so you will see that, for example, the educational ministry, the railway ministry, or some of like the when the army floats the tender, you will still see like they are preparing the tender documents as like it was prepared 10 years back. So there is still the old technical specification, same parameters. Okay. So I think, sir, it is because as you see, lots of local solar companies are also doing the business as like a medium scale EPC. So I think, sir, we also need to specify that what will be the product specification strictly. For example, when like maybe from the power division or the BPDB invites the tender, like they specified very strictly or they prepared the tender document as very high standard. But when maybe like, for example, LGD, PWD, or the other government organization are inviting the tender, they are maybe following the old tender document. What is happening as a result, maybe when someone is getting the contract, like they are just doing the work, not maintaining the proper quality. So I will also request you, sir, like I think, sir, maybe when SEDA is organizing the conference session, we can also invite other government organizations, engineer or the technical person. Maybe, so for example, in the LGD, there may be a good executive engineer of electrical division, but maybe like he is not used to with dealing with the solar projects, as like similar with the PWD. So, this question is related basically for the local solar companies.
Okay, thank you. Can we go to Mr. Siddharth Rana? Mr. Rana, do you have any presentation quickly, because we have another, I think, 7 to 10 minutes. We have time now.
So, Mr. Dipal Barua, I'm fine with the most of the things we have discussed right now in the lot of with to and fro discussion with Mr. Full panel. So we're not taking much time. So I believe we all now will focus, and with the guidance of Mr. R.B. Shahi, he will be keep visiting us, and we will be we know what are the challenges for this country and how we have to overcome those, and collectively we all will work towards overcoming those challenges. And for the presentation wise, because on the paucity of time, I don't want to show the presentation right now. Maybe in the next time I will show the presentation because
Very nice.
everyone, yes, else it will take, because there's other panel also which has to be come up.
Yeah, so I like to talk about about the irrigation. Then Mr. R.B. Shahi can also a little bit conclusion about our session. One is we talk about the solar rooftop program, the potential and aggregation. This is the new idea. I think it would be interesting case. But solar irrigation, our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina mentioned that after COVID-19, the food production or crisis of food would be a huge one. So in many countries of the world, the main season is off because of the COVID-19. So in Bangladesh, we are lucky we have a fertile land. So I think the irrigation, solar irrigation has one scope that we can do. I mean, even a 10% renewable energy from the sources, but we have almost 3% only, still 7% lagging behind. So I think irrigation, we have through ITCOL, we already installed 2,000 solar irrigation pump, but we have 1.3 million irrigation pump by what it called a diesel run or a fuel. So we can replace gradually by solar irrigation pump, but ITCOL helping only the big size, but there is a smaller size also irrigation, 3 kilowatt, 4 kilowatt, 5 kilowatt. So we are suggesting from Bangladesh Solar and Energy Association, we are in a final stage to suggest the government. So the government given a 50 to 60% grant, even the farmer base. So there are a lot of company we can install and maintain the system. And already we have experience so that farmers can be owner of the small solar irrigation pump and they can irrigate the land and produce the and also in many cases already we install grid tie system. We have around 35 kilowatt one irrigation pump with the SREDA, help of SREDA. We already grid tie system. 50% time we are using for the irrigation, another 50% time we are transferring the excess power to the grid line, to the REB. So I think this is the combination of irrigation and also the supply to the grid line also. So the both way it is benefiting, and farmers will be benefiting because the cost is almost 40% less than the diesel run pump. I think this is a win-win situation, and we can create a job at the rural level, and renewable energy will grow and the food supply will grow, and even we can increase the percentage of renewable energy or energy mix. That will create a lot of hope in the agricultural community and also the policy making. I think apart from the grid tie rooftop net metering, this is also can be added up, and there is already we have a practical experience like this. That's why this is one point. And also we are looking for a small cold storage by renewable energy in the rural area. We can keep the agriculture produce banana, apples, any tomatoes, any potato, or anything we can keep for 1 month, 2 months in the rural area that can get better price of the producers. So that also we can try one. And also we have some scope for also the clinic in the rural area. We can 100% renewable energy, we can run clinic also power from the renewable sources, because after the Ampan, there is no electricity in the southern part of the country for 1 week, 2 weeks. I think the supply from the renewable sources, the constant supply, uninterrupted supply also can be done. And also we are thinking about the grid tie 5 kilowatt, 3 kilowatt system in the rural areas, so they can produce electricity and can sell into the grid line, and also they can use it for their home, and they can use this rooftop for solar energy for income generation and for energy generation for themselves and for also selling into the grid line. So there are new thinking. We can see the gradually enormous scope of renewable energy can grow if we need a strong policy on that. I think after COVID-19, especially the irrigation and rooftop can be one easy solution, so the renewable energy can grow and the mix of energy, renewable energy contribution will grow, and also the employment will generate, and the quality of electricity also will increase. Thank you. Any questions? I think we can.
Sir, just now. Last one question, sir. Like, sir, regarding the mini grid, sir, as we all know that, like, Bangladesh have also installed some mini grids, sir. So what's your thinking, Dipal Bora, sir? Like
The next session, we have a mini grid person will be the next session.
okay.
I think mini grid also because now they are suffering the price wise. They are charging 30 taka per kilowatt hour, but in the electricity around 9 to 10 taka, even commercial rate also. So the people who are in the rural area, they are paying higher price. And so there is a discomfort about the price of the per unit cost, and also the mini grid developer also suffering because of the economic cost return. So in that case,
we can establish
we have to
a new
review
technical
how,
design. Maybe then like mini grid can be sustainable.
and I think the next session we have a mini grid people will discuss about the issue. Yeah.
So I think,
Can I add one point?
yes, sir. Sure, sir. Definitely.
Regarding the mini grid, as in response to Mr. Imran Chaudhary's query, because we have basically 26 mini grids are now operating in Bangladesh. So we have taken a decision that once Rural Electrification Board, they go with grid power there, basically the utilities will just take over the mini grids so that the investors must not suffer. People will enjoy the same tariff which is available to the normal grid people. The same tariff will be enjoyed by the mini grid consumers. The gap will be provided by the utility. That is decided. So, in any way, the sponsors will not suffer, and the pricing should be decided by a tripartite meeting. The sponsor, the utility, and the mini grid owner. These three guys will decide how much money is to be provided to the mini grid owner. Is that okay?
Okay, sir. So, sir, in this area, just a simple question, sir.
Already we have given decision.
Just to end this session in time, I just have one last question from organizer side as to how much solar capacity was added in Bangladesh in 2019, and in 2020-21 in next 1 or 2 years, how much capacity are we expected to add in the country? If anybody could answer this.
I think total renewable energy as per STRADA is still total.
So far, our total installed capacity of solar power is 400 megawatt.
Yes.
Taking all applications together, it is around 400 megawatt.
And sir, in next coming 2 years, how much capacity are we expected to add? 2020 and 2021.
Because you know, already more than 700 megawatt is in the pipeline. We have signed PPA. They are supposed to come basically within 6 months, but due to COVID, basically the implementation gets delayed. So it is delayed. Yes. Yeah,
we
so
can.
Sir, I think, sir, regarding the utility scale, sir, this year maybe 2 utility scale projects may complete the COD. So one is the Spectra, which basically we are doing the EPC 35 megawatt, and Mymensingh project may also complete the COD. So that means if these 2 projects can complete the COD by this year.
50 megawatt.
Yes, sir. Spectra one is 35 and Mymensingh is 50. So these 2 projects will complete the COD by this year. So that means we can add, sir, almost 85 megawatt to the grid.
Some other projects also they are supposed to complete by 2019, but they could not do that.
Yes, sir.
That's why we can't precisely say
we can say another 200 megawatt. But I think if after COVID-19, if there is any special program, that maybe expedite the total production capacity also.
Okay, so I think I'd like to really thank the panelists of the first session. With a great zeal and enthusiasm, you have enlightened all of us. And let's quickly move to the next session. I'm honored to invite Dr. Sebastian Grau, Managing Director from Solskjaer Limited, as our session chair and moderator. Mr. D.M. Mazibur Rahman, Managing Director from Solar Electro Bangladesh Limited. Mr. Hassan Mohi-Minul Aziz, Manager Renewable Energy from IDCOL. Mr. Mustafa A.K. Khan, Managing Director from Flow Solar Solutions Limited. Mr. Syed Samimul Haq, Director from Japan Solartech Bangladesh Limited, and Mr. SM Tawhidul Haq, for Project Director from Equiscap Asia Pte Limited. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us today evening. I'll request the speakers of the second session to keep your video on and your audio on. Don't mute yourself. It will be easier for all of us. So over to Dr. Sebastian to welcome our esteemed panelists for the second session and start the proceedings of the second session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anand. Thanks for having me moderate the session. Thanks for the first batch of speakers. I think it'll be hard for us to follow, but we'll try our best. We'll try our best to fill in a few of the gaps which were left to us, but also a few of the pointers which were given us. I think we spoke very little about the impact of COVID-19. The International Energy Agency just a few days ago published its new report that 2020 will be the first year with the lowest investment, but also consumption on energy in the world, what we have seen in the last couple of years. So definitely a dramatic shift, a dramatic cut here. So the question is, how has Bangladesh been dealing with this? Is this this whole COVID situation an accelerator, a new chance for renewables? Given we just heard we have so far achieved 400 megawatts, it could definitely stand a lot better. So is COVID helping the case, or is COVID inhibiting and stalling everything? So I think our speakers can shed some light on the impact of COVID. Deepal sir mentioned the mini grids, and Mr. Alauddin sir, and also the new policy which is in place. We have speakers who will elaborate on the situation of the mini grids, as well as on feed-in. We have a specialist on financing from Infraco. So lots of things to speak about. Just a few comments ahead. We spoke about solar parks, we spoke about rooftop solar, we spoke about floating, and we spoke about the 400 megawatt which have been achieved so far. And I think we can't stress it enough. We have ITCOL on the call, we have Mr. Dipal Barua on the call. And we also heard in the first session, solar is pretty new in Bangladesh. And I was kind of clinching because I'm the Bideshi on the call, and I have to put the word out here. Well, yes, but Bangladesh has also been a pioneer, and we have ITCOL and Deepal sir here as a co-founder of Grameen Shakti, as well as Bright Green Energy Foundation, which has set a world record in solar home systems. So there are more solar home systems in Bangladesh than in all other countries on the planet combined. So that is also 200 megawatts. So that would be half of the generation which has been installed. Yet we only speak about these big things. So just a small remark on my behalf. I represent, I'm an associate professor at Brack University, but also the managing director of SolShare. What we are trying to do, also in collaboration with BGEF, is these solar home systems are now being taken over by the grid. So the question is, these 200 megawatt of PV generation also have the equivalent amount of ampere hours in storage. Now, to the group, which country on the planet has 6 million distributed batteries in the remote areas of its country? No country at all. So the question is, can we leverage those assets? This is very valuable assets, so 6 million batteries and panels. Not all of them are still working, not all of them are still running, there's no doubt. But a lot of them are still working. And can we leverage them, that they are more than just a backup when the grid is offline? And the answer which we're trying to bring to the table, and we have been discussing with Alauddin sir and his ministry, is if a single solar home system cannot feed into the grid, it doesn't make technically it's possible, but economically it doesn't make sense. The system is too small. If you put an inverter and feed it into the grid, it doesn't make sense. But if I group hundreds of solar home systems and pool their energy together and feed it in, then we have a case. And that's what SolShare is trying to do. We call it a community power purchasing agreement, which we would like to get. I would also ask possibly a comment on when those solar water pump, which Deepal mentioned, or the 5 kilowatt mini grids when they feed into the grid, and it is not an agreement between REB or the utility, the sponsor, and the mini-grid company, but actually they feed in, a net metering wouldn't be fair, because this is remote renewable energy coupled with storage, where the grid needs it the most, at the edge of the grid. So it shouldn't be a net metering. It has to be a PPA. And if it's a community, the question is, how could you manage and negotiate such a community PPA? But I leave it at that, and would like to call for our first speaker, who I know has a wealth of knowledge on this and can tell us a lot more. Mr. Mujibur Rahman, the Managing Director of Solar Electro. He'll talk more about the scope of the solar industry, COVID-19, and I'm sure also about the mini-grids. So the floor is yours, Mr. Mujibur Rahman.
Okay, thank you.
And if you have a video, that would also be great. I think it's better if we can see you. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. It's actually, yeah. Or go ahead like this if the connection is not holding strong enough. Are you still with us, or should I give you a minute and we'll proceed with another speaker?
Hello.
Yeah, we
Hello.
hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
thank you. I am DM Mujibur Rahman, Managing Director Solar Electro Bangladesh Limited. Thanks to all. And previous session, I want to thanks to everybody, including our Additional Secretary, our of the Power Ministry of Bangladesh, and our BSRE President, Mr. Dipal Barua. Also addressed Sebastian Ghosh, now the moderator. Thank all. I want to how Bangladesh solar industry can reduce stress risks during COVID-19. Just I go through. There are 7 main types of solar industry in Bangladesh, such as solar mega projects, solar rooftop projects, solar net zero project, solar mini-grid project, solar irrigation project, solar home system, and solar street light project. Due to COVID-19, the shutdown of industrial and commercial market, the solar electricity generation from the rooftop and net zero project is directly going to the grid line. For the same region of the solar mini grid project, the unused, they are 15% generation. COVID-19 will have no effect on remaining solar project, because in Bangladesh the average load had 12,000 megawatt before COVID-19. Now the load average 10,000 megawatts. So minimum risk stress during the COVID-19, which is recoverable. Another, the scope of solar industry in Bangladesh. Bangladesh is a density populated country. Hello, populated country. Solar mega projects require more land. In this case, it is very difficult to arrange agriculture, non-agricultural land for solar mega project in Bangladesh. Moreover, the value of the land is much higher. Firstly, solar rooftop project over and above the scope of solar industry in Bangladesh, an opportunity by installing solar panels, we may using rooftop, government, semi-government, private sector, industry, and commercial building. Secondly, solar park project can be installed using the open space of government office and in many project areas. Thirdly, it is possible to implement many large-scale projects to use solar street light instead of traditional street light in cities, port, municipal area, and others in Bangladesh. Fourthly, there are opportunity in investment by installing solar irrigation pump by replacement of diesel irrigation pump. Lastly, floating solar project can be installed on the river, water course, area, bridge, and canal, etc., for generating mass for electricity. But cost and smart policies in Bangladesh in solar rooftop and grid integration. In the case of investment, the investor wants to ensure return on investment ROI within 6 to 7 years, which is common for all. But the current solar project of Bangladesh is difficult to achieve return on investment ROI is for 14 to 15 years needed, because Bangladesh itself rainy, cloudy and foggy area. For that reason, Bangladesh has the lowest radiation compared to other countries, which is average 0.5 kilowatt-hour per meter square per day. As an average annual power generation is much lower than other countries. So
I think the voice of Mr. Rahman is not very clear. Mr. Rahman, are you using any earphone connected with a microphone or something? Maybe you can try removing that and speak directly to the device.
Okay, just a minute, please.
Your voice is very low.
Okay, try to.
Better. Please go ahead.
Okay. Difficult to achieve return. For the reason, Bangladesh has the lowest radiation in the meter square. Another, the actual solar industry under the current policy. For that, it is possible to recovery.
I think I'll suggest Mr. Sebastian to.
Yes, okay. Okay, just 2 minutes only. The actual harnessing of kilowatt or any project which can be sold by the consumer end metering unit, that is the reflection project wise achievement in given below. The megawatt project of Bangladesh area, megawatt project radiation is 3.2 hours per day. For rooftop project radiation 3.1 per day. For solar mini grid project radiation 2.8 hours per day. The above mentioned project wise achievement has been taken through practical actual assessment throughout the country. Subject to the achievement mentioned above, PPA is required to ensure return on investment within 6 to 7 years, considering the recovery of investment. Therefore, it is necessary to accurately measure foggy, cloudy and rainy days irradiation and radiation by project-wise actual assessment, by the data collection of meteorological department, that the solar megawatt, rooftop, solar mini grid, solar irrigation pump, etc. are analyzed individually on the project basis, and how much electricity kilowatt hour is generated is daily, monthly, yearly. Then after assessing the sellable kilowatt hour which is received from consumer and metering unit, then investment cost, benefit and ROI will finalize the basis of the assessing kilowatt hour. Then it should be returned within 7 years, and the new policy should be adopted by considering all those things, and the policy can be implemented. Then the stress risks will cover in the solar sector in Bangladesh. Also, may expansion of the solar energy in Bangladesh. This is main focus. Actual generation, actual sellable unit assessment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mujibur Rahman. I think that's a very good pointer to our next speaker, Hassan Aziz, the manager renewable energy from Midcall, because they are managing a lot of those projects. They have a lot of tables. I know in their Excel sheets, they calculate exactly a lot of the things you just mentioned in order to fix the tariffs. So I'll pass it over to Mr. Hassan Aziz, who wanted to focus on the impact of the lockdown, as well as several experiences on the solar energy development projects. The floor is yours.
Okay, can you hear me, Sebastian?
Perfect, Tushar, perfect.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, EQ International, for organizing such a beautiful Zoom meeting. And it's very important right now and very, very crucial thing that we are talking about. That's what is after the COVID situation, what will be the impact on the renewable energy. Right now, from the ITCO side, we have a lot of intervention already said about that. What intervention we have irrigation, solar home system, we have mini grid and the rooftop solar and grid-tied solar project. But the thing is that recently we have approved 25 megawatt of the rooftop project, but this is all based on the government sector. So right now, after the COVID situation, definitely the whole scenario is getting changed, because as of today, $3 billion already order is already been cancelled from the buyer, and everywhere, every country's economy is everybody is predicting that it might be shrink in some portion. And so that's why that's whole impact is might be very huge. That's we can't actually tell anything conclusively right now standing here as what will be. We can only predict. So for assessing and developing market, how the solar market will go on. So right now we are talking with our clients for this kind of projects, what is the impact they are going. So we are targeting those markets. And we want to actually make a trend the solar market where the impact is less. Like the industry, if I'm talking about the rooftop solar, industrial rooftop solar, then we are targeting right now the factories that's like producing food and other beverages or medicine, etc. So those who have less impact. That is for the rooftop solar. And more or less, actually, we are thinking about how the thing will improve, because within a couple of months, actually, we don't think so that COVID impact will go or COVID will go, because still we don't have any reliable vaccine, reliable medicine or treatment yet. So I think it's quite difficult for us to predict. That's only we can say some assumption if. So here I'm just telling about some assumptions what we are doing right now. So recently we are thinking about adding some innovative thing to promote the renewable energy sector, or move or keep the momentum for the renewable energy sector. Like we are thinking about the EV charging, because we have lots of electric driven vehicle all over the country. And if we can, and all are dependent on the grid electricity. So we are thinking that if we can set up a good amount of the EV charging station all over the country, that might definitely reduce some burden from the grid. So another innovation we want, that is actually doing some agrivoltaic things, because more or less ITCOL is always working with the innovative intervention considering the solar or renewable energy. So right now we are thinking about that if we can do some agrivoltaics or mixed culture, like the crops with some fisheries and adding with, because right now a lot of fishing technologies is there, like biofloc and others. So it needs continuous pumping, so it needs energy. So that we think actually addressing the COVID impact, because our Honorable Prime Minister already said that the food crisis might actually coming up, and we need more and more production of food. So actually supplementing with the paddy and other crops, if we can actually boost up the fish cultivation, and where the energy is needed, we can also add the renewable energy over there. So that is the one. So it's all about the innovation. Also for the garments industry, I want to tell. So right now, the whole garments sector is right now in survival mode, because right now their order is cancelling, their revenue is deducting in that portion, and government is already declared at 5,000 crore taka some incentive package for them to pull them up. So the thing is that we want to see the whole interventions of the solar like this. It can make a symbiotic mechanism. Like they are now in the survival mode. If the solar can save some of their expenses, so that definitely would help them, right? Right now, previously, sometimes governments, industry people are seeing the solar and renewable energy intervention is like a compliance thing. So right now, it is not a compliance, it is a savings, because they can get the cheaper electricity and than the grid electricity by that. So if they can replace the solar electricity with the grid electricity, so they can save some. So thus we can make some symbiotic mechanism that putting the solar, it is not actually increase any expense. The finance is ready with the very, very concessionary financing that nobody have declared yet in the local currency. It could have the packages for this kind of intervention. So that might boost, that might create the whole market. And also we will promote the OPEX, but definitely after assessing the market, where is going on, because the garments industry is right now, we are closely actually observing the whole thing, how the garment sector is moving and how it is growing or it's recovering. So after that, definitely we have a lot of effort. We will give a lot of effort to boosting the OPEX interventions for the rooftop. And also we will add, we try to add some innovative interventions in solar to promote this market. So I think also I can add this, that right now for the COVID, other than treating it with the vaccine, you have to kill it. So there are a lot of things that we can put the disinfectizer over the marketplace, over the rural areas.
I'll interrupt.
Yeah.
And I'll request Mr. Sebastian to give
sure,
up.
I'll be a little bit stricter, okay. But I think there were some excellent points. I suppose we will we'll soon see a lot more innovation coming through the ITCOL pipeline, possibly a call for innovation on the EV charging and so forth. But you couldn't also have given a better pass to our next speaker, who is an expert on industrial rooftop solar, on setting up financing channels, working on the OPEX model. And as you said, there is a crisis definitely in the RMG sector.
Yeah.
And everybody needs to cut costs, but why not cutting electricity costs through solar, and that it's not a compliance. But Mr. Mustafa Akar Khan, I know the managing director from Flow Solar, he surely can tell us a lot about this. What does your pipeline look like before COVID and now during COVID? And what are your expectations in the upcoming months?
Thank you so much. First to the organizers, EQ, for such an awesome, I think, webinar. I think we learned quite a bit, and I think it's really nice to see a lot of familiar faces. And you know, together we are promoting rooftop solar. So basically, for us, our focus was as Flow Solar to be a platform. You know, to be a platform where global EPC companies, large investors, lenders like ITCOL could all come together by leveraging our local engineering solutions and our strong network to serve the needs of the clients. And from the very beginning, for us, we were very strategic about the kind of clients we were going after, and somehow we didn't end up focusing so much on the textile sector. Actually, some of our clients are in the steel industry that we're having discussions with. Others are large conglomerates. And also we feel for the OPEX model, especially the larger potential, like the economic zones, could be even more interesting down the road. So if Sebastian, to answer your question about pre-COVID versus post, I think there is delays, but I think, the value proposition that we are looking to provide here as the saving is quite important. And I think we need the support right now from a policy level, from an incentive level. Like I know in India, there are tax incentives, there are government incentives to promote rooftop solar, and that, almost $600 million fund that the World Bank has given to SBI to promote rooftop solar. So I think this is a high time for Bangladesh to implement some of this, so that I think OPEX needs to come sooner. I think this will be a key change for us. I think people would be very interested in OPEX, but then again, there's a lot of business uncertainty right now. So how do you assess the kind of credit risks, etc., given things are so fluid? So that's where I think we need to work together with lenders, with the government, to come up with a scenario where we still serve the clients, but at the same time, support our transition to OPEX. To be very honest with you, Sebastian, right now, Flow Solar is looking at getting off the mark with some CAPEX projects, even though if it's smaller, or we're looking at ways to kind of subsidize our projects. And, one of our key partners is Sharp, and we've, used their expertise to propose some solutions to clients. So our goal is to be that platform where I think global companies feel comfortable working. And I'd like to hear from the other panelists, how can we kind of set up a fast track to OPEX? Because I think if we let COVID derail OPEX, I think it'll be very difficult to get that adoption that rooftop solar kind of promises. So it's really important for us that this does not go into the back burner. And it's something that we can use as a COVID response and something to restart the economy.
Right. And recover better. Thank you very much, Mustafa Bhai, for that. And given the time, right over to Mr. Syed Samuel Hawke, the director of Japan Solar, who will elaborate a little bit more on the barriers in the market.
So thank you, Sebastian, and thank you, EQ, for giving me the opportunity to participate in this webinar. As we all know that solar has been a matter of interest for a lot of the conglomerates and a lot of the business houses here in Bangladesh. But the way we started, I feel like somewhere we just lost our way. We had enormous opportunities. If you see the thriving success that Grameen Shakti and BRAC achieved in the early 2010, that has imposed a scenario which looks very rosy. But after having 2 million solar home systems by 2013, and then we somehow lost our way. Players like Grameen Shakti, who has done tremendously well, accounting for almost 50% of the solar home systems that has been installed under the ITCOL program, they lost their way and they have gone bankrupt. And similarly, some other big solar home systems providers, especially the POs of ITCOL, they also lost their way. We have to identify why. We had those momentum and why we have given this up. Although the government has came up with some lofty ambitions, like if you go through the website of SREDA, you will see they have put a target of 10% of the total generation capacity should come from renewable energy source, which means, like in today's terms, it should be at least 2,000 megawatt. But I don't think we are far behind that target. By 2021, they are saying 15% of it. So if that is the case, I think there's something wrong the way we have planned and the way we have executed. So I think it's time for us to pinpoint what are the challenges that the industries are facing. Of course, one thing that I would like to identify as a major barrier is the regulator. Although what I understand that solar market, the renewable energy market, will fall under the umbrella of BARC, Bangladesh Energy Regulatory Commission. But it seems that they hardly take any initiative to regulate this market. As long as the solar home system market were concerned, you would see ITCOL has played the role of a regulator, although their prime role was to finance those projects, but they acted more as a regulator also, and that brought in the success in the solar home systems. And we used to brag to our friends that we had the best way of implementing solar home systems, where we could bring in the benefit to the bottom of the pyramid people who need it most. But that didn't go through. That didn't go through the way we wanted. So given this pretext, I think we have to identify the challenges, and we need to have some stern action needed from the government side, from the regulators, plus support from the stakeholders to show the intention, the right intention, that we really want to make this renewable energy sector a success. So when I mentioned the stakeholders, we have to keep sweet for all the stakeholders. If we think that we would be having a flourishing solar power market, and we were going to bring in benefit to the bottom of the pyramids without accommodating the interest of the power plant owners, without securing the interest of the suppliers or the installation companies, I don't think it will be a success anymore. It will have some start, but it will never see the light. It will never have the light of success. So
thank you very much. I'm afraid we have to move on, and I think you put the finger into quite a few wounds already. And I'm sure that a couple of people are quite provoked to answer and to contest some of your points. But before that, I would like to move on to Mr. Tawhid Haq, from the project director from AgriCap Asia. From a perspective of Infraco, what's your view on the Bangladeshi market?
Hi, Shabishan. Thank you. I hope everyone can listen to me.
Yes, loud and clear.
Great. Good afternoon. I'm currently the project director of EquiCap Asia. Just to give you a brief idea of EquiCap Asia, EquiCap Asia is the exclusive developer team who manages the fund for Infraco Asia in the South Asian region. And this fund is basically a development fund for developing infrastructure projects majorly in Asia and also in South Asia. And Infraco Asia is basically a facility of Private Infrastructure Development Group, shortly known as PIDG. PIDG is basically funded by the 6 government countries alongside IFC. Most of the government countries are European countries. And I would like to go through a short list of the bigger projects that Infraco Asia has recently commissioned in Asia. And one of them is in 2019 June, Infraco Asia has commissioned the 168 megawatt solar power project that is in Vietnam. And in Vietnam, we have also built a 29.7 megawatt hydropower project. And in terms of renewable energy in Pakistan, in 2017, Infraco has commissioned 2 wind power projects, 50 megawatt of each. At this point of time, we are envisaging the opportunity with the solar market in Pakistan, Nepal together. At this point of time in Pakistan, the net metering system is also in place, just like Bangladesh. We are also trying to penetrate the rooftop market of Pakistan. And we're also in the process of developing hydropower projects in Pakistan. And for that, I am been fortunate enough to be in the board of directors of Infraco Asia Holdco in Pakistan and in Singapore for developing the hydropower projects. And for Bangladesh, I'm the project lead for the ground mounted solar power projects in Bangladesh. In the recent past, we have been in close contact with the Bangladesh government, especially Bangladesh Power Development Board and Ministry of Power, for developing the government power projects alongside our strategic partners. We are focusing on Noakhali at this point of time, and it is in advanced stage. And other than that, other parts of Bangladesh, we have identified a couple of more land parcels that look to be promising in terms of the surrounding evacuation facility, and also in the terms of the non-agricultural thing that is a basic requirement for Bangladesh government in terms of the ground mounted solar power project. And so as Infraco Asia, we are very much keen on developing all these ground mounted power projects in Bangladesh, despite the fact everyone has been giving their thoughts in the COVID-19, post-COVID-19 scenario that can actually happen in Bangladesh. But from our side, Infraco Asia, we would like to, and at the same time, we are committed with all the ground mounted solar power projects that we have currently in place in Bangladesh, and we will be committed in future also. And luckily, I have been in touch with other foreign investors who has also given their expression that they are also of the same belief that Bangladesh solar market at this point of time is a very promising market, and they would like to be present in this market in the near future. This is the understanding that I had while talking to them. And I would like to really give a big thank to the Bangladesh government for providing this platform where the foreign investors are actually feeling the comfort to put their investment in Bangladesh and in this solar sector at this point of time. And just to add to that, Garanco, who is one of Infraco's sister concern, they have been actively involved in the 20 megawatt solar power project that was in Teknaf, mostly known as the Teknaf Solar Tech Energy Limited. Garanco provided a 15 years guarantee with the dual currency solution for that particular project. So things are looking brighter for our side, and we are very much committed. And other than the ground-mounted solar power projects, we are also in the process of developing off-grid solar power projects. At this point of time, we have identified the location Hatia for a good place for the off-grid solutions. And also, we have already granted the no objection certificate from SREDA in the Hatia to install these off-grid solutions. And at this point of time, we are ongoing discussion with the landowners to lease out the roof space where we can install the systems. This system will basically connect at least 30 to 40 households, and starting from the battery metering and the cabling, everything will be done by us. There is no capex involvement for the consumer level. They simply need to charge and use the facility. So that is what we are doing at this point of time, other than the ground-mounted grid-connected solar projects. And now, since the net metering policy is also in place, we are also trying to penetrate the rooftop solar market, which seems to be a good opportunity for everyone to click in. And we also have a strategic partnership with one of the prominent solar companies in Bangladesh who are providing solution in this regard. So these are the kind of projects that Infraco Asia is currently taking care of. These are the portfolio projects of Infraco Asia in Bangladesh, in solar particularly. And we are still committed with all the projects despite all the scenario that is going through. And this is most of it from my side. I thank you, everyone. And I would like to thank you for inviting me in this webinar. Personally, for me, there has been a lot of takeaways. I think a lot of innovative ideas has been shared by Mr. Hassan. I have taken note of this, and Mr. Ravi Shahi before in the first session also have given a lot of thoughts that is actually will make sense. And also a lot of familiar figures that I can see over here, like Mustafa is also here. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. And I would love to answer your question if there is any. Yes.
Thank you very much, Tawhid. I'm looking towards Anand. How much time do we have as follow-up discussion?
We can have, I think, 10-15 minutes more if you like. Or...
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, no, fantastic. Because I try to keep everyone super short, that we definitely are are assured that everyone had his full speaking slot. So thank you very much for sticking to the time. Now we bear the fruits of that because we have some extra time for discussion. So I would open the floor to anyone, also from the previous session, of course, to comment on the set, or also within the panelists of our group. Please go ahead.
Sebastian, if I can have 30 seconds because I can't complete that. So
sure.
Here I found that a lot of entrepreneurs and the researchers here is listening to us. So that's what I actually want to say before that. After the COVID, that we need a lot of disinfectant and this kind of tunnels and the facilities over throughout the country to kill it, because in the rural areas we don't know how the second wave will be. So in that case, those researchers like the SoulShare can do some innovative ideas. Then definitely we can take as a pilot project if it is a business viable model. Then we can also fund. So that was actually my the finishing thought for the renewable energy interventions. So that's it. So just I want to just ask a question to Sebastian. So right now, do you think anything like this, that after post-COVID situation, how the thing will go on?
Let me just say something about, because I didn't speak about COVID. So for those of you who are not familiar, what we're doing is we're trading electricity between different solar home systems. So we build a grid out of independent solar home systems. And I just got the data graph last week when the government announced the lockdown, or the chutti, the government holiday. What happened in our grids is that the people started trading 6 times more in the week after the lockdown than in the week before. Why is that? Because as we all saw, that once the lockdown was announced, 11 million people went to the villages. So right now in our grids, the average household size is no longer 4 to 5 people, but it's actually 8, 9, 10 people. So there's a lot more energy consumption going on. We saw a lot of people putting a lot of money onto the electricity meters. And our meters are actually in taka and not in kilowatt hours. So the COVID response by the people was actually stocking up on the electricity to make sure that works. And I think we also saw it here in the utilities in Dhaka. The people who had prepaid meters, they were under the lockdown, under social distancing, they were queuing up in front of the offices to top up their meters. So it's definitely a very, very strong expressed need. Now in the post-COVID, I mean, definitely I saw in the startup sector of Dhaka, I saw a lot of companies stepping up. And we saw our food companies who the e-commerce sector, who all pivoted to suddenly supply pharmaceutical goods. We saw a lot of people stepping up, right? So I think the startup sector is definitely stepping up to the challenge. What is missing a bit in the startup sector is the energy startups. So we see very few energy startups. And everybody knows the pot house and so forth, and the food pandas, because we order there and whatnot. But we see very little innovation, or not innovation, but very little startups in the energy sector popping up. We almost feel sometimes lonely as SoulShare. I mean, we have Mustafa by here with Flow Solar, but we are definitely very few. And the question needs to be, why is that? I mean, yes, the market was or is dominated by a lot of the partner organizations through the ITCOL program. This we have heard was a huge success, recognized in the entire world. But as Samuel said, it somehow lost its way. I'll just leave that statement in the room like that. So what is next? I mean, I'll give it open. Mustafa, maybe you want to comment?
Sure. So if I could address that, I think that's a really good point. There is very few energy startups, and I think it's because of the generally the capital intensive nature of the business. I think generating energy, you're up against some very big players, in the market. So I think that is one of the challenges, and also convincing foreign investors. Because see, even at Flow Solar, we have launched the platform, but for us to be really successful, we need large investors to back us, like, you know, Infraco and others who are ready to, you know, take that gamble on Bangladesh in a sector that is still nascent. I know for a fact by 2030, I mean, you go 5 years down the road, the rooftop solar market will be gigawatt scale, whereas right now we are barely at, you know, a few megawatts. So I think lenders are apprehensive. I think investors are apprehensive, clients are apprehensive. So for us, I think the solution has been to engage with the top players who have done this elsewhere, and to try and kind of implement this. But I think that is the inherent challenge. And also for customers, I mean, when I go and talk to some customers about megawatt scale rooftop solar, they get a little bit apprehensive that, you know, where has that been done in Bangladesh? So yes, a lot of talk has happened, but implementation wise, if you really look at it, it's fairly nascent. So I think that's where energy startups, I think, need a special type of incubation. And I think it needs special kind of support from lenders, from investors, from government policy, and only then can we thrive. But I do believe that the energy sector allows for a unicorn. Like I think SoulShare, Flow Solar, these can be very large companies, say 10 years down the road, because we are early entrants into the market. But we would need that level of support from the stakeholders and clients, of course, to, I think, get there. But I have no doubt that we can be the unicorns of Bangladesh tomorrow.
Sebastian, I would like to add a point here, complimenting Mr. Mustafa. If you see, when the solar home systems project got successful, it was done under the leadership of ITCOL. And in ITCOL, you would see all the major donors were there. It was a joint venture of World Bank, KfW, ADB, and name any. Everyone was there. But somehow they shy away. On top of that, on 2013, 2014, we were hearing ADB is committing $500 million only for renewable energy sector. Where did they leave? Whereas in India, at that point of time, they didn't have any commitments. But look at World Bank. They came up with a plan, and now through SBI, it's a two-stage financing. They're financing on solar market a large sum for solar market, $600 million. But here we lost our way. That's what I'm trying to identify. We have to read from the success story that we had and try to build on it. I think we are suffering because we don't have a model. We are trying to do a lot of things on ad hoc basis, but we need a blueprint. We need a strategic planning, supported and guided by the top of the government. If you see, now the generation capacity, the power generation capacity is almost 20,000 megawatts. 50% of those are sitting idle. You know why? Because of the grid line. We don't have enough grid line to reach our end users. And for that, government is subsidizing $1 billion, roughly more than $1 billion every year to keep those generation capacity. Just imagine now, if we could put at least $100 million as subsidy on solar market, we don't have to go through any grid line or anything. We can reach the customer right away, transfer the entire benefit to the customers, which will have a lot of indirect benefit too. Like in education and other sanitization, in other sectors, we can extract benefits on those sectors also. But I think it's time for us to have a national plan on solar, solar projects. And other than that, I don't think we will be able to, say that we are successful. We have a lot of interest here, but we don't have enough courage to do that. Last year, National Board of Revenue imposed 10% customs duty on import of solar panels. Now, whom are you taxing? You're taxing the bottom of the pyramids, poorest of the poorest, to whom we are
let's
unable to provide.
Let's give some people a chance to comment on this.
Yes,
I mean, Deepal just went away, but he's coming back. So I definitely want to hear from him a little bit about that. But maybe also Mr. Alauddin, sir, I think we have to go back to the previous panel because what we are bringing up here are points which should be addressed by Mr. Alauddin, sir, and Mr. Deepal, sir. Deepal, I know you went out for a minute, but you heard the first half, I think, and he also mentioned the new taxes on solar. And since I know that you have been involved there, so I'll split it between the two of you, Mr. Alauddin, Mr. Barua. If you could please comment on that.
Mr. Alauddin, are you giving any comment?
Okay, you speak fast then.
Okay, so Deepal, please start.
Mr. Dipal Barua was part of the success. So he
was part of the success.
Yes.
So he had a blueprint. So
yes,
what is our next blueprint?
Thank you. I think the solar home system, everybody appreciated it, and finally, around 5 million system installed, 15% of the population getting electricity from the solar home system when there was no electricity from 1996. At that time, there was no, even the government took a program in, I think, near to Narayanganj, Dhaka, but from the French government give the money. But at that time, we started Gramin Shakti. But Gramin Shakti grow very well because market-based model. But I think the growth of grid electricity is so speedy, and then there is no planning where there is a concentration of solar home system. At the same time, grid electricity is also there. So people obviously select the grid electricity, and it's also subsidized. So there is no mechanism how the solar home system and the grid electricity can run by same time. And there we needed some coordination, but it does not happen. But the learning, what we learned, when the solar home system growth, at that time, people enjoyed it very much. If you go into 1996, 97, 98, even 2012, 13, what Samuel mentioned, I think is exciting. But any success, you have a liabilities also. Because success, you have to graduate it in such a way, you can do other thing also. Or because once you have a master degree, you get post-graduation. But once you have a graduation, you get a master degree. So I think this is one, but the inspiration, what we have drawn from the solar home system, we go for a solar irrigation, we went to a rooftop, we went to even a land-mounted solar large project also. But every project has some kind of a business proposal. And is also on the time. Otherwise, you cannot actually handle it in any kinds of initiatives. Say like a Grameen Bank, if you run it for 20 years, you have to review it and you have to redesign it. So anything you design at the time and the economy and the social system, you have to redesign it. There was no electricity. 15% we have electricity only in 1996. 85% no electricity. So solar home system worked very well at that time. Once you have a 90% electricity and 10% people have no electricity, so you have to redesign it such a way. I think it's not somebody damage it, but actually this is in the course of time, in different socio-economic conditions and coordination, it's not click in that way. I think this inspiration is still an inspiration, even that inspiration helping us to grow solar market in Bangladesh. You know, Bangladesh government also trying hard, but we have also failure because we need to articulate. This webinar is also one important thing. We need to articulate what are the positive side for the renewable energy in the London. Now you are organizing next month debate. So we like to push in that way. I met the minister in Abu Dhabi recently, January, and I told him, what about the rooftop? You can land crisis. You are always talking about. No, well, we have lacking. We like to do more on rooftop because roof is there. Is still free, we can take it. So I think we need to concentrate some of the important lessons, even the policymakers a good combination and coordination and help each other so we can strategize there. So we need to ignite all these institutions. This is a there is a research cell also in the Power Ministry, and we have a Alauddin Shahab is always helping us. I think STRADA is there, and now the Principal Secretary, he's also a background in the the Power Development Secretary. So Power Secretary. So he has know everything. I think we can now, after COVID, we can create a smart proposal, articulate proposal, how we can really convince the government at least 10, 20, 15% for the renewable energy. And I'm not, I'm hopeful, I'm dreaming it's possible. Only we need to concentrate our mind and convince the policymakers so it can help. I think the solar home system is a success, but if some weaknesses, limitations, we can learn from that weaknesses also, is also an inspiration for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dipal, for this positive outlook. And the last word, of course, to Mr. Alauddin, sir. Please.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Shabashzin, for giving me the floor, because I attended the first session and your session, both these sessions, because it's a learning session for me. So, of course, we have to learn from our success as well as from our failures also. In Bangladesh, because you know, as Dipal Barua correctly pointed out, when they succeeded with the solar home system, that was a particular time. So time has changed, and also we also initiate a program. Of course, we also have to have some kind of exit program also, because one program cannot sustain forever. For example, with the my ITCOL colleague will be with me on this point that, of course, they have very successfully implemented the solar home system. But right at the moment, as already we have 96% access to electricity, and also our Rural Electrification Board, REB, also reached the grassroots level. That's why people has a general tendency to have the grid power. Normally, it's the people's psychology. So that's why we have to have an exit plan for solar home system, number 1 point. And second point is, of course, we have to look for the innovative and alternative solution. As per myself, I thought that our rooftop is an innovative solution. Already, it is very economically viable. Say, for example, for industrial consumers, we have around 3 lakhs of industrial consumers. They pay up to 10 taka per unit energy per kilowatt hour. But once, if they install rooftop solar, their cost will be within 4 to 5 Bangladeshi taka. So here is the scope. I see huge scope for expansion of rooftop system. And also our colleague from Mustafa A.K. Khan, that the OPEX model, we have already launched the net metering guidelines in 2018. Upon getting suggestions from our private sector friend, we have revised the net metering guideline. Also now we have introduced the OPEX model. So it is open to the entrepreneurs to install the rooftop solar in others industry, so that there is a huge, this is a very economic case. And I believe if we can implement it correctly, even both CAPEX and OPEX model can go side by side. And I believe it is my firm conviction that this is a very doable and economically viable solution, number 1 for rooftop. And second, come to another area of intervention is the floating solar. Just we have piloted one 10 kilowatt peak at Mongla Port Municipality. Already I had personally been there. It is running good with net metered connection. So now is the time to come up with utility scale project. Let's say 15 megawatt, 20 megawatts. If we do one project, you know, success breeds success. So then the investors will have confidence in them to come up with very larger projects. So we'll look forward to see the success of even floating solar projects also. And also, you know, there is a very combination of in my recent article, I think you have gone through my article, that it is also possible to go for hybridization with hydroelectricity project of floating solar. So these are the things we have to explore for for expansion of solar system. And also one thing we must keep in mind also, this is a webinar on only solar, but we have to also look for other avenues. Let's say now, right at the moment, of course, you will see within a few days, I'm coming up with another article on exploring the offshore wind power. This is also.
But I think we leave that for another webinar of EQ to be hosted.
Yes. So we will leave no stone unturned to
absolutely
our renewable sector. So I must thank you for giving me opportunity to interact with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alauddin, sir, for this positive outlook, and also Deepal for this outlook. Thank you very much to Mujibur Rahman, Hassan Assis, Mustafa A.K. Khan, Syed Samuel Hawk, and Tawhid Hawk. Thank you very much for contributing. I'll pass over to you, Anand, again, slightly over time, but we did our best.
Yeah, I think it was quite enlightening, and it was a quick crash course for a lot of people out here on the Bangladesh solar market. And I see that a lot of potential is there. Extremely proud of the government. So heartiest congratulations to Mr. Alauddin. And I think the entire industry out there is very lucky under leadership of people like Mr. Alauddin. If the government is so supportive, then nothing can stop this sector to grow. And it was also a pleasure to listen from Mr. R.V. Shahi as how the neighbors can work together. And so if that kind of synergy is also there, so that's also, I think, a big possibility for the sector to grow. So thank you very much. It's wonderful to have all of you support, and we hope COVID times end soon and we are able to meet and see each other in a nice hotel in Dhaka. So till then, enjoy all of you, enjoy the weekend, and wish you all very good luck. Be very safe, and let's sail through this time quickly. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.